Hey guys, it's your boy Luke here for our weekly DFS live stream, my favorite time of the week. Going to talk all things DFS for the Memorial, weather, players, projections, ownership, all that sort of fun stuff. And of course, your live questions. I can see we have Chandler already down there in chat. What is going on, man? He's on Team Bryson. So we'll talk about Bryson a little bit later, but just a little bit of a sneak peek. So am I. So like to see that there, Chandler. Of course, anytime we get a superstar level player coming back to the field, always going to be an exciting thing. So hopefully he can play well for us this weekend. But let's start off with a review of the golf course, where you can see it's a relatively difficult affair. So of course, this is data golf I have on the screen. The scoring average was well over par, 0.97 shots over par. In fact, driving accuracy is a little bit easier here because we have some large fairways. But on the converse side, the green's relatively hard to hit. So, something I've heard this week is that the closer to the hole you get, the more difficult the shots are. And I'd have to agree with that, right? Off the tee, like I said, relatively large landing areas. And these greens, small targets, but also relatively firm greens. So to actually hold these greens, you usually have to be hitting out of the fairway, which, isn't all that hard this week. But if you're spraying it, that is not going to be a recipe for success. And even more importantly, when you're on the greens at Muirfield Village, you're dealing with 12 and a half on the stint meter. So they're running relatively fast. And of course, a ton of undulation. And the renovation, it was meant to make the golf course harder, not necessarily more playable. So when they went out there, they did a lot of the renovations. They made it a harder golf course to putt on. And last year, that wasn't really evident because they weren't running them nearly as fast. But in the first year of the renovation, right there in 2020, when John Rahm won at -9, that is really the teeth of this golf course. When they're running at 12, maybe 12 and a half on the stint meter, winning score is going to be single digits under par. I mean, for Rahm to even get to -9 that year was a pretty outstanding feat. What we saw last year, where Rahm was 16 or 17 under par through 2 rounds, might have even been better than that. You're not going to see that this year. I mean, even with a storm coming through, we'll hop over to the weather. It's a great segue here. There is a storm coming through right in about an hour or two in the Columbus area. You can see right around 9 p.m. You do have those 3 little raindrops there. That is thunderstorms that they're expecting tonight. But they have a sub air. That's like the huge but there. That's something that they installed during the renovation. So a lot of that moisture, there's no guarantee that that's actually going to be at the golf course. And in terms of actual precipitation, it's going to be like an inch and a half at the very most. So even though it is a thunderstorm, it could just as easily suck a lot of that moisture out of the ground. And with a lot of the quotes that we've gone throughout the week, I mean, they're playing firm and fast as ever living crap right now. I mean, Jack Nicklaus kind of promised that to us with some of his press conferences over the last few weeks, and it looks like he's held up his end of the bargain. So hopefully that will continue throughout the weekend, because as a golf purist, somebody who wants to see these guys go out there and struggle week in and week out, I think that's truly what golf should be, right? Winning score, single digit under pars, that's actually what I would prefer. I think we're going to see that this week. And that's even with relatively benign conditions, at least from the wind side. You can see just single digits, at least most of the day, when it comes to that sustained wind and wind gusts in the teens, right? So nothing that's that drastic. And for Friday, it's a very similar story. Pretty much single digits for most of the morning when it comes to the sustained winds. And while the gusts might be a little bit more severe here on Friday afternoon, I don't know if it's enough to fully stack, right? To go to this PM AM wave, while it might be slightly advantageous, it's nothing I'm going to go wild with. If anything, it's going to be like a 2, maybe 2.5 fantasy point difference between the two waves. Just in terms of actually making your player pool, it should be an afterthought, right? If anything, something that you might use to break ties or something like that between two players. But more than that, I think you'd be kind of fooling yourself there. So from a general standpoint, I think this winning score last year of 13 under par is probably not likely to stand. It's probably going to be something closer to, let's say, like 8, 7, maybe even 10 under par at the very best next year. And a scoring average of maybe 1.5, maybe even 2 shots over par per round. With these firm, fast conditions, that's what we saw there in 2020. And I know it was the first year after the renovation, right? They were kind of limited with what they were able to do. They didn't have sub airs under every single green. It's going to get worse. The whole reason for the renovation was to make this a harder golf course. I mean, he was quoted as saying that much. So I would expect that trend to continue this year and, of course, with all the years going forward. Let's hop over to the player poll. I can see a bunch of you are down there in chat right now. We got Abrasive down there. What is going on? We got Ali Burrow, favorite time of the week. Couldn't agree anymore. Adolfo says $200 single entry. Any thoughts on core players? So we'll touch on that pretty much throughout the video. So the answer to that, Adolfo, is going to be watch the next 30 minutes to an hour. We're going to talk about the entire player pool. So make sure to strap in for that. We have Jin down here who says, this is the tournament. I won second round last year in 5th place on my other team. So you got good vibes here then, right? Obviously, you're kind of like the returning champion. If you had won the GBP, I could say that you'd be defending your crown this week, but maybe you can improve on that, right? You got the good recent form coming in, Jin. That's good to see. Hopefully you can improve on that. And Nick says, what is the most amount of under 7,200 guys you'd put in your poll? So I'm assuming you mean in the same lineup, not necessarily in my poll. In my poll, I mean maybe 20 players, right? That's a section where you're not taking more than maybe 7 to 10% of any players. You're going to have those 3 to 5%ers in that range. Whereas in the 9K range, right, there might be 10 players and I'm playing like half of them. I'm not playing half of that range, right? So just it depends on what range you're in. In terms of those under $7,200 guys, there's plenty that I like, right? If we go down to that section, just right here alone, there's about 10 guys that I have. We move down even to the 6,500s. There's quite a few guys in that middle of the 6K range that I'm going to like for the slate. And even towards the bare minimum, quite a few guys at $6,000, even $6,100 or $6,200 that are going to be in my poll this week. So to answer your question there, Nick, quite a few. It depends on the slate, but usually something in that 20 to 30 range. I have a lot less players at the top of my poll than I do towards the bottom. That's just going to be a byproduct of percentages, right? When you're taking 20, maybe even 40% of some of these guys up top, whereas down low, you're talking about, Bo Hogue, I have like 3% of this week. Robert Schreb, I have 5% of this week. Those would be aggressive plays down low, right? Whereas up top, much higher percentage when it comes to those exposure. Catch Me If You Can says Minwoo Lee shocks the world this week. I actually really like Minwoo. He's in my player pool, and I don't have a reason for it other than he's a really good player. And when I was going through my poll, going through all the stats, look at it. He's like number 117, 116, 113. I don't think he wins this week, but at some point, whether it's this week, next, sometime over the next few months, he's going to have that coming out party. On the European Tour, I agree. Minwoo Lee, an absolute stud. And at difficult golf courses, that's really where he made his hay. Why not him this week? I agree. $6,500. In terms of pedigree, at one point last year, he was like number 47 in the official World Golf Rankings. Everyone else in this range is like past 100 at the very best. There's a few notable exceptions, maybe like an EVR that's also in that top 100. But yeah, in terms of pedigree, I agree with you. It might be Minwoo Lee week. A little bit of a tongue twister there. I'm just not sure when it's going to happen. Hopefully it's this week when I have 7% of them. But yeah, sooner rather than later, you're going to see that breakout performance. But let's start at the top of the board. Start talking about some of our favorite plays. And yeah, Catch Me If You Can, I caught that. He said he's number 55 now. He's still number 55 in the world, right? That's still ridiculous for a $6,500 golfer. Those international wins obviously carry a lot of weight for why he has that 55th ranking there in the world rankings, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And I guess the last question we'll talk about before we hop in is that Alex says, I have 25 total teams this week, 17 golfers in my player pool. Is this a good number or more or less? And to me, it depends on how aggressive you're being. So I don't know your exposure caps, whether you're taking like 40 or 50% of any one player. But in terms of having 25 lineups, 17 players, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's probably a little bit aggressive. In terms of value picks, you probably have like 6 or 7 in your pool. The other 10, maybe 11 players are guys in that 8, 9, and 10K range. I could see it, but without actually seeing how much you have of every player, it'd be a little bit hard to say. If you have, let's say, 40 to 50% of some of your guys up top, if you have in that 10 to 15% range of some of those value picks, I think you're doing the right thing there, Alex. If you're having like 40% of some of those guys in the lower 7K or the top of the 6K range, then you might need a few more players in your pool. So I think that's probably the best way for you to evaluate that. But again, kind of hard to see without actually looking at a player-by-player basis. But let's go ahead and hop into the poll. At the top of things, Jon Rahm was a very close fade for me this week, and it comes down to the around the green play. In fact, also his approach play all of a sudden John Rahm is only gaining off the tee. But when you're gaining 1.2 strokes per round off the tee, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to be a top-notch player. And while I don't expect that, him to do that this week, I think he's going to be better around the green. I think he's going to be better on approach. Historically, he's been a damn good putter on bent grass. That's the reason I'm playing him here, right? I mean, the recent form doesn't look all that good. It's kind of similar to somebody like Xander Schauffele, who we'll talk about here in a second, where it's kind of mediocre across the board other than one category. I am fading Xander Schauffele this week. Big difference here is the course history. John Rahm loves this place. The guy is on a mission to go on a revenge tour after last year, and that's not the reason I'm playing him. It's the course fit. Off the tee, approach play. He's a top 5 player in the world in both categories. At times, he's the number 1 player in the world in both categories. And if you do that at Memorial, which he's more than capable of doing, I mean, even when he was finishing in like 30th, 40th, during the fall swing this year, when he couldn't make a putt for his life, when he had that famous quote about the bleeping putting contest, he was like finishing number 1 in shots gained off the tee and approach pretty much every single week. I mean, if he does that here, he wins this by 5 strokes. It's that type of golf course where the ball striking, those 2 categories specifically pretty much dominate all of the shots gained. When it comes to putting, we've had guys like Hideki win here. I mean, even Tiger Woods, I hate to trash the guy. He's not a very good putter, at least statistically, right? If you take a look at his shots gained putting, he's hardly ever in the positive there. He's won here before. Recent winners like a Patrick Cantlay have kind of bucked that trend. But at the same time, there's just a longer term sample size of a lot of guys that aren't so good at the putting playing well here. And it has been renovated, so we only have a 2-round sample size of what we've seen after the renovation. But John Rahm being in contention both years, winning there in 2021, I mean, that's enough of a sample size for me, right? Both years here, he essentially should have won the golf tournament. For him to do it 3 years in a row would not surprise me. I mean, it just, from a logic standpoint, obviously from what we've seen from the eye test at this golf course, he loves the place. And it makes a lot of sense why he'd play well here. So he'll be in the player pool. I tried to find a reason to fade him. I couldn't. He's only 15.8% owned too. So not like he's going to be super chalky. In terms of chalky, we do have a lot of ownership behind Rory. And pretty much anytime I put out core plays, guys, you should expect them to be chalky. And it's not because people watch my videos and just blindly tail plays. It's because they make sense per the numbers, right? I'm running models, and the plays I put in my core picks are all my models' top plays, right? That's the point of that video. And if people are doing adequate analysis, right, doing research on the golf course, no duh, they should also think that those plays are good because they're doing their own modeling, right? So obviously there's differences between my process and what other people do, but to say that Rory's a good play, I don't think that should surprise anyone. He's gaining across the board. He loves bent grass greens. He's gaining close to a stroke per round off the tee and on approach. It's the most no-brainer play in human history. So just lock him in. I don't think you have to overthink it there. He's going to be relatively chalky. But if you can't find a reason to fade somebody, even if they have that ownership, you got to play him, right? If somebody like Cantlay, we'll talk about the reason for fading him. I went over it in my fades video, but a lot, the putting has not been good at all for Patrick Cantlay. Victor Hovland's around the green play is a problem. Xander Schauffele, even though he has a win on his record, the recent form does not look good. So there's got to be a reason for making these fades. And for John Rahm, for Rory McIlroy, couldn't find one. So both of them going to be leveraged plays in my poll. Let's look at the whole Patrick Cantlay situation. That's what I'm calling him at this point. I'm a salty Patrick Cantlay rosterer there at the PGA Championship. I think a lot of us in the industry were that week. He's losing strokes at the putter. He's been fined from tee to green, right? And I say fine because it hasn't really been exceptional in any category, not any one category over a third of a stroke per round, but he's losing almost 2/3 of a stroke per round with the putter. So essentially everything he's doing with the ball striking, he's completely overriding it with his shots gained putting. And we know that that's not the type of player he is. So we could see a bounce back from him, but I'm not taking chances on a bounce back for a guy in the 10K range, a guy that's $10,700, a guy that's also almost 15% owned. You take chances on plays that are like 1% owned and they're in the 6K range. Those are the type of players that you hope bounce back, that they can find the putter. You're not trying to hope that a guy in this 10K range is just hoping to find a putter. I mean, if he was going to be like 6-7% owned, nobody was on Patrick Cantlay this week, I think would make a lot of sense. But given his course history, his track record, the fact that he's a defending champion, has 2 wins at the Memorial, he's obviously not going to be a sneaky play. People are going to be on Patrick Cantlay this week, particularly a lot of the casuals out there that just look at course history and then just blindly play the people that have won at this event before. And Obviously, that's not really going to be a part of my process. It's all about the data for me. And of late, the data has not been favorable for Patrick Cantlay. So not in my player pool, not going to worry about it. I mean, I know the course history is there, but time and time again, you see course history fail, right? It's why you don't see somebody win every single year at a given golf tournament. Yeah, they might win once or twice or 3 times at the Valspar for somebody like a Paul Casey. But when somebody does that, I mean, that's the outlier, right? Even if they go on like a 1 to 2 year stretch where they maybe defend their championship, it usually ends pretty quickly and you don't hear about them for quite some time. Again, when you have somebody like a Paul Casey who's won 3 times at the Valspar, there's a reason we remember that. It's strange. It doesn't happen very often. So the recent form isn't there. You know, I'm one of those people that'll fade people after they win anyways, just because, and there's no statistical relevance to that, right? It's a gambler's fallacy. Not playing somebody after they immediately win. It's why people, when they're playing roulette, will bet on red right after there's been a whole train of blacks in a row or whatever. And it's again a gambler's fallacy. It doesn't always work out, but for me in DFS it has. So I'm going to run with that. Again, just wanted to point that out in case you wanted to play him. I don't think you have to avoid him, but the recent form isn't there for me. Colin Morikawa at 10,400. The numbers have been there, right? Even though the finishes haven't been there, the numbers have been, right? On the approach, he's gaining close to a stroke per round. He's never really a prolific gainer off the tee. So the fact that he's gaining a third of a stroke there, I'm okay with that, right? You know, at best, when you're catching his form, it might be like a half a stroke per round with a Colin Morikawa. But most importantly, around the green, he hasn't been that bad, which can cause him trouble from time to time. And the putter's been holding him back. And on bent grass, this is something I pointed out when I talked about him in the sleeper picks. He's 0.4 of a stroke better per round. So, you know, if we take a look at his baseline, right, he's losing right around 0.47 per round. That means it's going to be about a neutral putter. And Colin Morikawa with a neutral putter, his floor is a top maybe 15 finish, right? We'll push. I was going to say top 10, but we'll say top 15 finish for Colin Morikawa in this strength of field. He goes out there and even gains stroke and a half, 2 strokes to the field in that category. That's when he's in contention to win, right? And if he has a better performance than that, book it, right? Colin Morikawa was winning this thing. So in terms of an upside, I think it makes a lot of sense. In terms of the form, I shouldn't say form, the course history for Colin Morikawa, not only as it looked good at the Memorial, obviously they played the Workday Championship at this Memorial in 2020. They played it here. So he has a second, he has the 48th finish, but the 48th in 2020 was preceded by a win at Memorial Golf Course. So just understand that he has a win, a second place finish. He also won down at the Concession last year, which is another Nicklaus design. Very similar greens to what we have there for this week. And it's not Memorial. I don't know why I'm calling it Memorial. It's the Memorial Tournament. It's the Muirfield Village Golf Course. He's won at Nicklaus Designs. He's obviously won at this golf course before. He's finished at second at this golf course before. Makes no sense to me why he's 14.3% owned. I mean, right, he's $300 cheaper than Cantlay, right? So he's cheaper. He's easier to fit into lineups. His recent form is better than Patrick Cantlay, and he has a win and a second place finish here, right? Patrick Cantlay has 2 wins here, right? Oh, wow. You know, 1 win rather than a second place finish. The better forms on Morikawa's side. He's a cheaper player. He's lower owned than Cantlay. You know, why would anyone side with Cantlay? I mean, that's my argument here, right? Obviously, when you have somebody that's cheaper and arguably the same play from a course history perspective, better recent form, and from an upside perspective, Colin Morikawa wins a lot more than Patrick Cantlay. He has that killer instinct. He has that pop upside when he brings that putter to the table. So that's why he's a priority for me over somebody like a Patrick Cantlay. Xander, we'll talk about the Xander situation. He's been decent. He's gaining across the board, right? But it's been mediocre off the tee. He's missed plenty of fairways, which is, you know, kind of held him back in that category. Around the green, he deals with troubles from time to time. While he is a gainer most years around the green, he'll go on stretches where he starts to lose to the field. And of late, that has been an issue. He's gone from a relatively solid gainer around the green to now somebody that's just above a neutral. So clearly trending in the wrong direction there. And the putter can be a little bit come and go for Xander. And the real issue I have is look at all the guys up top. I mean, they're gaining close to half a stroke more per round. I mean, Colin Morikawa, I mean, look at this. Cantlay gains a ton more on bent grass. Xander, it's just 0.2 shots, right? So he's not nearly the specialist of some of these other players, which, you know, kind of holds him back. It's not really a death sentence for Xander Schauffele. The death sentence is the ownership. Yesterday, he was 19% projected owned. Now he's gone down to just 16.8%, but I think that's a little bit low. He kind of always gets a bump people just like playing Xander Schauffele for whatever reason. He's obviously cheaper. He's at the $10,200 range rather than over $11,000 like a John Rahm. And I just think a lot of people are going to click him into lineups. He's been talked up by multiple people around the industry this week. And he always gets that Xander Schauffele bump. Like I said, it's like 5% higher in terms of his actual ownership to where that compared to where he was projected the day before. And would not be surprised to see that once again. We get a sip of water here. We'll catch up on chat and then hop into some of this 9K range. It's a good thing I stopped. There were quite a few questions there. Ali Bro says, any idea how first timers do on this golf course? Should I be concerned with Riley and Young? So for me, I'm concerned about it. It's historically, I don't have it quantified. Right? So I can't give you a stat on it or anything like that. There have been first time winners here. I believe Hideki won in his first ever trip here. But outside of that, I don't know if it's happened after that in terms of a guy actually winning. And in terms of top 10, top 5 finishes, I have no way to quantify that. I haven't gone through the stats and done it. But from the eye test, this plays like a major championship. Jack Nicklaus was quoted as saying that he wanted this to be his quote-unquote Masters, a golf course with really tricky greens where experience matters. And he was actually quoted as saying that experience should matter at a golf course. So in theory, they should suck, right? You got to have a strategy for this place. The greens are really tricky. They have a lot of double, triple breakers to them. They're not the easiest to read. Kind of similar to a Perry Maxwell design, which we've seen over the last few weeks. And those golf courses, Masters, right? Augusta National is a perfect example of that type of golf course. First timers suck. Like they have a really hard time there. And this renovation only happened 2 years ago. So we don't have a huge sample size to work with anyways. But I would imagine over the next 2 to 3 years that you see a lot of these first timers miss the cut. So for me, I'm going to be avoiding Cameron Young. Same thing with Davis Riley. Cameron Young, right? His first trip to the Masters this year, just to further prove that point, he missed the cut. And then, of course, third place finish. That's why he's mega chalk for this slate. That's also why I'm fading him, is he's the highest owned player on the slate. Outside of that, though, right, he missed the cut at a similar golf course. So I have a reason to fade him, right? Outside, unlike some of the other chalky plays on the slate that I'm still playing like a Jordan Spieth. There's no reason you could possibly tell me to fade him. And if you mention the putter, we just got to mention it right now. He gains 1.2 strokes more per round on bent grass than his 50-round baseline. And his 50-round baseline, right, is losing 0.5 shots. So he gains 0.7 shots per round. Right. I had to just mention that because it's the most ridiculous thing I've seen for quite some time. It's over a 1.2 shot differential there for Jordan Spieth. You got to play him, right? But at the same time, anytime you have these chalky plays, like a Cameron Young, where you actually have something that you can hold against them, then I'll be fading them. So to answer your question there in a long-winded way, yes, I am worried about some of the first timers. Jin Yang says, how do you feel about Zalatoris? I love him. First off, he's played here before, but it was back in 2018, so it was a real long time ago. But he plays well at the Masters. He played well his first time there too. A lot of that comes down to the familiarity with the greens. They're fast, undulating, bent grass greens. Also played well at Southern Hills, and that was obviously his first time there, right? They haven't played there since 2007. Fast, undulating, bent grass greens, and he went out there and made a ton of putts. In fact, I believe through 2 rounds, he was number 1 in shots gained putting in that event, which, for Will Zalatoris is a huge outlier for him. So we have a similar situation this week. If he does that same thing, and he's done it twice at the Masters, not just this year. He did it his first time when he finished in second, gained a ton of strokes to the field. He could easily win this thing. So yeah, I have actually considered putting an outright bet on him as well. I haven't fired on it, but I am considering it. Catch Me If You Can says, who are your 2 most mispriced players this week? And give me some Harris English. So my 2 most mispriced players, Bryson DeChambeau is one of them. He's 1.4% owned. Yes, I am playing him. I'm not crazy. We'll talk about it here in a second. So obviously I'd say he's an extremely mispriced player. And outside of that, it's tough to say. I guess Beau Hossler, right? Beau Hossler $6,200, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially considering the form, because Beau Hossler's been playing well. So if we take a look at this, 21st, he's made the cut, 17th at the Byron Nelson, he had a second the whole way back at Valero, a few missed cuts in there. So I understand why he'd be in the 6K range, but $6,200, come on, man, right? That's a mispriced player. So those would be my 2 options for you. Yeah, we'll talk about the whole Bryson thing. He's either going to miss the cut, shoot like 10 over par this week. or be in contention. There's no in between for Bryson this week. He's either a complete dog shit, you're glad you faded him, or he goes out there and he's in contention at $7,800, and you're like, why the hell didn't I play 7% Bryson? And that's what I'm doing this week, right? He's 1.4% owned. I'm playing 7% Bryson as a pure FOMO type of thing, just like fear of missing out. I could not live with myself if he was even just like 75% Bryson DeChambeau. 75% Bryson at $7,800 is way more than enough to pay off. I mean, his birdie or better percentage is off the charts. I mean, even at difficult tracks, he makes a ton of birdies because of how solid of a putter he is. That worries me, right? Fading him would really worry me this week if he even tees it up. I mean, he might withdraw for all we know tomorrow, so obviously don't go crazy on the Bryson love. But yeah, I think he's a completely mispriced golfer there. That's one of the options for me. Hef Sterling says Jordan Spieth is experimenting with a new putter this week. That doesn't sound good. I would argue it does sound good because he's been complete dog shit, right? He's losing half a stroke per round with his putting right now. It's not going to get worse than that. I mean, Rory McIlroy today was asked who the best putter of all time was, and he said Jordan Spieth. He said that Jordan Spieth is by far the best putter that he's ever seen. It's going to turn around. And if using a new putter like Dustin Johnson fixes it, I mean, DJ, he's infamous for that, right? He'll go out there, he'll just swap around the putters, he'll take 7 out there to the putting green, find one that he likes, and then go out there and gain 7 strokes putting to the field. If Jordan does that week, he wins this by 10. So I'm betting him once again. He really hasn't cost us anything. I mean, he's putting horribly, right? He's in like the worst stretch of like putting in his entire career. And look at his finishes. All right, I'm on course history there. What am I doing? Let's go over here to the recent form tab. 7th, 2nd, 1st. He won the worst stretch of golf he's playing in his entire career. Miscut the Masters. Okay, that's slightly concerning. 35th. I mean, even the 34th at the PGA. I mean, like that's really not all that bad. And he finds the putter. He's winning like 5-6 events. I mean, Jordan Spieth realistically is the only player that I think could even catch Scotty Scheffler this year when it comes to his FedEx Cup points. Because if Jordan Spieth finds the putter, he realistically could win like 4 events before the season's over. I mean, that's the kind of play that he's putting up right now. His shots gain metrics from tee to green are the best they've ever been in his career. I mean, when he was winning all of those events there early on in his career, people were comparing him to Tiger Woods and whatnot. He wasn't doing this. He wasn't gaining 3/4 of a stroke per round in every category. I mean, we're on an unprecedented level with Jordan Spieth right now. And I'm not just saying this as like the biggest Jordan Spieth fan in the world. When he finds that putter, he's winning. I can literally guarantee you the week he goes out there and gains like 5 or 6 strokes to the field with the putter, he wins. And he probably wins by like 5 strokes. So that's why I'm so adamant about the play is if you've been putting coins into the Jordan Spieth ATM for the last month, which frankly has paid off. Like I said, 7th, 2nd, 1st place finish. It's paid off over the last month. You sure as shit should not stop now when he's only 18% owned at a golf course that realistically fits his game. And he's primed for an even better performance. He's going to find the putter at some point. I mean, that would be foolish. You'd be foolish to jump off the train at this point. I mean, it makes no sense. Realistically, he should be like 30% owned this week. Like if projected ownership wise, he should be like 30% owned. I'm going to have 50% Jordan Spieth this week. I'm going to have a ridiculous amount. And if he goes out there and wins by 5 strokes, I'm probably winning all the money this week. So I'll catch you guys at the ATM if that's the case. Let me catch up on chat. I have completely lost my spot here. So let me go ahead and find out where we are. There we are. Jin Yang says he thinks Jon Rahm will win this week. I think he has a good chance. If he runs into the Jordan Spieth buzzsaw, maybe not so much. Muddy says, I like Rahm as well. Just wondering how he keeps his composure with Bryson in the group. Maybe he'll get his comedy. Maybe Bryson will go talk about some fire ants again or something like that. Maybe it'll take away some of the anger from Jon Rahm. But yeah, Bryson can be an interesting character to play with. Nick Marr says Harman was god-awful Thursday, played okay on Friday. Highest owned chalk with a missed cut. Doesn't take much to get leverage. Are you going there? Yes. So he's in my player pool. I have him down as a yes. Where is he at? He's like mid 7K, right? Maybe even cheaper. Oh, wow. They just really dropped his price. Where the hell is he? He can't be that cheap. All right, there he is. Yeah, $7,100. He's only 2.6% owned. So that's what I have him at in terms of ownership. Yeah, I'm on him because he likes difficult tracks. He's accurate off the tee. His putting on bent grass isn't ideal, but yeah, like you said, he was like 20% owned last week. Now he's going to be 2% owned. Yeah, it's a clear spot you want to get to, especially when the golf course is there. Robert says, Minwoo Lee, my ass. Well, guess what? Robert Barnes, my ass. You're going to get fucking banned, bitch. Peace. That's what happens when you make clown comments down in chat. You get banned, and I don't give a fuck about it. It's that simple. So moving on from there, we got Alex who says, do we go back to Cameron Tringale? I'm not going to be. I'm a little bit worried about his approach play. It hasn't looked all that good of late. He was kind of all over the place there. And I really like Gary. I really like Tom Hoagie once again, who kind of like Brian Harmon, right? He was mega chalk. He missed the cut. I was one of the guys that got completely killed by him last week, but in other circumstance, right, he's going to be lower owned than he should be now. I'm at 7.3%. If he had gone out there, made the cut, finished in the top 25, you're probably looking at like 15 to 20% owned Tom Hoagie. I mean, he'd be mega chalk at $7,400. So I'd rather get to Tom Hoagie than a Cameron Tringale, or I'd rather spend up for an Aaron Wise or a Siwoo Kim. So there's a reason why I have him down as a blank. I don't hate the play on this slate. Just guys that I like a little bit more. And opportunity cost would be the reason that he's not in my pool. Mightius says, I'm loving the late Thursday tee times, leading after round one and keeping it throughout. A lot of great pairings in groups late Thursday. So I'm okay with that type of knowledge, but I mean, just from like the split standpoint, it's not anything I'm going to act on. So if you want to do it to differentiate yourself, kind of pin yourself into a corner for that type of thing, you can go ahead and do that. Plant says, note Bryson and Rom play practice rounds together. They like each other. I didn't know that. I guess that's good to know. It makes sense because Phil is really good friends with Bryson, and Phil is also really good friends with Rom. So it would make sense that they play practice rounds together. In fact, I would assume that Bryson, Phil, and Rom probably play a lot of those practice rounds together. So that's good to know. I didn't know that those two were linked too, but it does make sense now that I think about it. Abrasive says, any concern with Spieth trying the new putter? Yeah, I kind of answered that. I actually think it's a good thing for him. Planet Warrior says, what about Hogue? Top 13 course knowledge at 500 to 1. Seems like a sprinkle might be worth a drop. I don't have him in the outright market. I don't think he wins this thing. I mean, it's still Bo Hogue. He's still having trouble on the Korn Ferry Tour, but I do have 3% in my GPP lineups. Like you said, top 13 finish last year would have been enough to be in the optimal lineup because he was also just $6,000. If he does that this year, you're probably going to want to have him too. So yes, he is in my player pool, but I cannot get behind him at 500 to 1. He's not winning this thing. It's a really difficult track. Course knowledge or not, you still got to be a top-notch player to win on the PGA Tour. Sam Ergel says, how you feeling about him this week? I'm torn on him. I'm torn on him too. I didn't really know what to think about him at $8,900. I tried fitting him into my player pool. So I guess I should note this, right? We haven't talked about all these plays, so we'll talk about it here in a second. The reason why Im's down as a blank, Matt Fitzpatrick, and frankly, Xander Schauffele, the reason why they're down as a blank is I couldn't fit them into my pool. When I went to actually go generate my set of 150 lineups, I wasn't able to play all these people and get adequate leverage. So the first casualties were Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Sungjae Im. So I do like them this week, but I like the other guys around them a little bit more. Most notably, Shane Lowry, I think, is almost a must play this week. Chalk or not, it makes a whole lot of sense. Even going down a little bit further, I like this middle of the 8K range a little bit more than the top. And you can see from Sungjae Im the whole way down to Davis Riley, that whole range is a fade for me. And we're going to talk about why when we get there. But quite a few concerns I have with those guys, to be honest. Jin Yang says, what do you think about a Reed top 20 bet? I think you could do a whole lot worse. He's a very solid around the green player, solid getting up and down. The form was there 2 weeks ago. He gained over 5 strokes approach in that round. Last week was solid through the first 2 rounds when it came to his approach play, but on the weekend really fell apart. So in terms of a top 20, I like the bet. I do like him as a DFS play. I wouldn't bet him outright, though. I still think he has a lot of room to improve, a lot of rust to shake off before we start to do that. Chris Palmer says, I was going to ask Spieth or Cam Smith in cash. That's sounding like Cam is the answer. Thoughts? Yeah, if you're looking for a safe play in cash, honestly, no, it's Jordan Spieth. No, it is Jordan Spieth because the course history for Cam Smith isn't ideal. So he has that little bit of a red flag to deal with. But the main answer I've been giving people about Cam Smith this week is that course history was before the renovation. He has played the last 2 years since the renovation. So maybe we can use that as a sample size, right? Which, of course, hasn't been ideal for Cam Smith. He has a missed cut and 1 made cut. But it's not nearly as bad as looking at this 5-year sample size, right? Where it's two other missed cuts, also just a 65th place finish. The actual course form that I care about for Muirfield Village is what 1 made cut, 1 middling performance. We've seen guys turn that around before, right? So I still feel like that red flag is enough to keep me off of him, though, at least in cash, because Jordan Spieth He's been much better at this golf course. The course history, it's up and down, right? But it's top 20, top 15, top 10 finish, another top 15. He's the safer commodity, especially when the shots gain metrics for both of them are ridiculously solid, right? Gaining in pretty much every category. Cam Smith has his issues off the tee. Jordan Spieth has his issues with the putter. But I was going to bet on one of them to turn it around this week, at least more often than the other. It would be Jordan Spieth, right? Because the putter for him has historically been so good. Cameron Smith has kind of always struggled off the tee. So not really sure if we could expect him to pop more often than Jordan Spieth. So Chris, to answer your question, it would actually be the other way around. Mark says I backed Ricky Fowler and Keegan Bradley each way for the first round at 70 and 60 to 1. Both have early tee times. Do they have any chance? They do have a chance. I like your Keegan Bradley bet a little bit more than the Ricky Fowler bet. I do have both in my player pool. I do think that Ricky has a good chance to finish top 10. I don't know if he's going to win, right? I mean, he's still extremely rusty. He's still really trying to get himself back into form. At the same time, a top 10, that's well within reach, right? Keegan Bradley, on the other hand, I mean, he's playing really solid golf. I mean, he's in the player pool for a reason. We take a look at stats for him. They're on another level. He's gaining in every category, which is rare for Keegan. He's not always the best around the green player. He's not always the best putter on the PGA Tour. I think we all know that, but he's been gaining of late. And if he continues to do that at this, can you guys hear me? Let me know down in chat if you guys can hear me. It was muted there. I think my mic must have unplugged. Hopefully it sounds okay right now, though. If it doesn't, make sure you guys go ahead and let me know in chat, though. But yeah, Mark, I do like the play there. I like Keegan Bradley a little bit more than Ricky Fowler. I don't know when my mic unplugged there, just because Keegan Bradley's gaining across all four categories. We have Mightiest, who says, cheeky pick of the week for me is Thigala. He's a good sleeper. I also have Thigala. I think he has some upside, but only 5%. And yeah, I got to love the trolls. Yeah, dude. Anyone that comes in here and just decides to troll, I have no patience for it, right? Because I'm putting out free content. Anyone that wants to come in here and be a smartass over the internet, right? If you were a smartass to my face, it'd be a lot different than over the internet, right? Over the internet, I'll just block you in person. No one would get away with that, right? So that's the difference. That's why I don't deal with it, right? Because these people that say the things that they do would never say it to my face, right? So that's the reason I got to ban them. It's just, it's more of a funny thing. It's the Kashmir Can thinks it's funny. Planet Warrior says, I'm torn on Kirk this week. What are your thoughts? Well, he's a core pick for me, so I certainly like Chris Kirk this week. So yeah, we'll talk about him in detail here. We will do a deep dive on Chris Kirk, but the shots gained metrics look excellent for him. The putting stats look pretty solid for him on bent grass. And the recent form, what is it, 2 top 15s in a row for Chris Kirk. Can't ask for any more there. So Cash says, this week has been the toughest to Eiffel down a player pool. So I'm assuming you mean like whittle down a player pool. It has been, especially up top. Finding some of the fades there in the 10K range or the 9K range. I mean, outside of Hovland, he was a no-brainer fade for me this week. Not the easiest thing to do. So yeah, I would agree with you. You see, you said put Whittle down there. Yeah, I should have read that to begin. Mr. Waking Up says, team no-putt course, start lineups with Spieth and Zalatoris. I have a few lineups with that start for sure. But I'll say the one thing with a huge but, Patrick Cantlay winning twice here, right? There are counterexamples of people that are solid putters winning, but they surely better have the approach play and the around the green play too. You can't just be a solid putter to win here. If you have that solid putter and you're really good in those other 2-3 categories that we're looking for, then it's a boost, right? So I would tend to agree with you there. I'm definitely on team Spieth this week. Do you like Spieth for first round leader? I don't know when he's teeing off. If he's teeing off in the morning, yes. If he's teeing off in the afternoon, no. That'd be my answer for you there. And I sound good. Good. That's good to know. This mic, the cord for it's a little bit frayed. I have cats and they like to chew on a lot of my cords, and I'm going to have to buy a new cord because she's obviously done a little bit of damage to this one. Or instead of it's like 3 seconds. Good. So you guys heard my argument for him. So let me hop back into the player poll. Then we'll catch up on chat. If there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them down there, though. We talked about Jordan Spieth. We kind of talked a little bit about Cam Smith, so we'll move on there. We did talk a little bit about Willie Z. I like his putting on these fast, undulating greens. Let's do the 10 seconds of Victor Hovland. I don't play Victor Hovland at difficult golf courses, and I don't play Victor Hovland at courses where around the green matters. And in terms of correlation to success, there is no other golf course where around the green matters more. This is the epitome of a course where you have to have a short game. So for me, it's a clear fade. And especially when he's 17% owned, it's just like, come on, man. Like, why are people like? I get that it's Victor Hovland, and I get that he's relatively cheap. He's only $9,300, but he hasn't been in good form. I mean, his finishes have been mediocre at best. His best finish was last week, and it was a top 21 finish. I mean, for Victor Hovland, that should be his floor. Should be a top 25 finish. 41st, 29th at the team events. That's really like a 65th place finish in a full field event. Wasn't even able to crack the top 25 at the Masters. I'm going to wait and see on him. I mean, if he gets down into that 8K range, they get him at an easy golf course, then sure, I'm going to be all over the kid, right? But not at this type of track. Hideki, I did find a way to get him into my pool. It was either him or Matt Fitzpatrick. It was pretty much a one-to-one decision for me to be made there. And I went with Hideki because first off, he has a win at this golf course. It was before the renovation, so sure, maybe we have to write that off. But he's a ball striker. He gains from tee to green like we're looking for. And of late, the putter has kind of been there, right? It hasn't like been a huge gainer for him, but he's been right around a neutral around the green, gaining 2/3 of a stroke on approach. Just he's a solid play. I mean, like, he's got a really high floor. If you're playing in cash, maybe go to Matsuyama just because of the fact that he is such a consistent play. Now, the one thing you can hold against him would be the course history, because of late it hasn't been that good, right? 62nd since the renovation. Missed cut there in the first year after the renovation, but before that, it was excellent. Top 10 finish, top 15 finish, made the cut. I forget what year he won. It might have been 20. Let me check this real quick. It's real easy to check. Hideki won back in 2014. It's obviously been good before then. So I know if you look at the last 2 years, might be a little bit of a bummer for him, but zoom out a little bit. He has a pretty solid course history there. So he'll be in the pool. Matt Fitzpatrick, it's more of a gut feel because my metrics love him this week. But I have a gut feeling that he's going to disappoint because last year at this course, he disappointed. He missed the cut. He did have the third place finish there in 2020. So I played him last year. I got burned by him at this event. And a lot of people did after that third place finish. Again, it was the first year since the renovation. So in that 1 year sample size, he looked like an absolute world beater. The issue I have with him here is his strength. When he misses this fairway and he's in that like 4-inch bent grass, ryegrass, fescue grass that they have around this golf course, he doesn't really have the strength to get through it. He's all about precision off the tee. And even though he hits the ball a long way, it's all with form. It's all with flexibility. I mean, he's not a brute strength guy, to say the least. I mean, he's been quoted as much as saying he looks like that kid in high school that like you could beat up and he wouldn't even like do anything, right? Because he's a little bit helpless. But I do like the kid. I play him a whole lot. I don't want to give him too much shit here, but I just have a little bit of a gut feeling there. It's not going to make my player pool. Understand playing him, though. That's why he's down as a blank. Shane Lowry, on the other hand, I think you kind of have to play him. I mean, there's not one reason you could tell me to fade him. Top 10 finish here last year. Out of the 4 finishes, he's made the cut 3 times. That's good enough for me. The recent form, you're not going to find a hotter player. Top 25 finish, top 15 finish, top 3, the Florida swing rate, second place finish at the Honda, multiple other top 10, top 25 finishes. In fact, his stats over the last 50 measured rounds are even better than over his last 24 measured rounds, where he has, again, the top 25 finish, the multiple top 3 finishes in the last 3 events. So the guy's been on a ridiculous stretch of form, and it hasn't even been a short stretch. I was hoping he was going to be $10,000. I mean, truth be told, he should be right around Cameron Smith in terms of his price, and he's $1,000 less expensive than he should be. So that's why he's going to be super high owned. But I only have him at 19% right now, which to me is pretty surprising. I mean, I'd expect him to be closer to like 25, 30% early in the week. That's kind of what I projected him to be when people were asking me like, oh, how many people are going to get to Shane Lowry this week? But if he's only going to be 19% owned, easy leverage spot for me. I'm going to be playing a solid 35, maybe even 40% come the end of my lineups. You have Sun GM. I talked about the fact that he's just a casualty of opportunity cost. Can't play everyone in this range that you like. So somebody that was one of the first few people that made his way out of my pool. Cameron Young is a deliberate fade. And let's talk about these young guns. So I'm going to go ahead and group together these next 3 players, which are Cam Young, Max Homa, and Davis Riley. Well, I expect all of them to have great careers. They really struggle on hard golf courses. And the only counterexample we have as of right now is Max Homa playing well at the Genesis. And That was the only reason I wanted to play him this week. I mean, I had heard that from another content creator. It's like, oh, Max Homa, you did play well there. I was like, oh, you played well at the Wells Fargo. It was relatively difficult there, but that was mostly weather related. It wasn't really the golf course, except when you look at Max Homa at the Masters. Max Homa at the Masters has been utter dog shit. I mean, this year, 48th. That's his best finish ever at Augusta National. Most of the time, he misses the cut when he goes to the Masters. You look at some of the other difficult tracks that he's played at. He's flopped other than the Genesis Invitational. So it's crazy how, we have this tendency to just remember, what's happened in the last 3 to 4 months and to completely ignore the larger sample size, which is he struggles on these golf courses for the same reason that Victor Hovland does. Because when you look at the stats, he's dog shit around the green. One of the worst players in this range. I mean, Abraham Ancer is the only one who's worse up here above $8,000. And all three of these guys are going to be clear fades for me this week. So looking at the numbers for Max Homa, I like the fact that he's, a funny kid, right? He interacts with everybody here on social media, but in terms of a course fit perspective, I don't know if it's there for him. And maybe he proves me wrong. I mean, the ball striking, nobody can question that for Max Homa. The kid is an absolute bona fide stud at this point. When he goes out there and he has his best stuff with the putter, gains in bunches in that category. I'm not going to hold that against him. One thing to note, though, is for his career, he's not been good on bent grass. In fact, loses over half a stroke more per round on bent grass than any other surface. So just a few things working against him. That's why he finds his way out of my pool. And more in terms of the young guns with Cameron Young and Davis Riley, it's that experience factor. I know Ali Burrow asked the question a little bit before about whether first timers should have, success here or whether they should run into some trouble. I tend to decide whether they'd run into trouble. It's a difficult golf course, difficult greens to deal with. We take a look at Cameron Young at the Masters. What did he do? Oh, yeah, he went out there and missed the cut, right? That's one of the few reasons why I didn't play him at the RBC Heritage. The week he went out there and finished in third. Obviously, that was impressive. I remember telling you guys that, a top 3 finish for him at that event specifically was impressive because it didn't fit his game. That worries me about the Masters, though. The greens at that golf course are so eerily similar to what we're going to see this week. I worry that he plays himself out of contention, that he 3-putts a little bit too often, because from a core skill set standpoint, around the green looks like a solid category for him where he's gaining over half a stroke per round. He is losing with the flat stick, but I wonder if that's going to hold for him because watching Cameron Young from the eye test around the green, it's not really pretty. I mean, I can just tell you as somebody that does a lot of golf, that is, relatively skilled golfer myself, that watches a lot of the, best players in the world around the green, his form does not look like their form. And, maybe I'll be proved wrong. Maybe his method works. He's able to go out there and gain in bunches around the green, but he tends to send shots high most of the time. He doesn't really have that low runner game like a lot of these other players do. And I wonder if that's going to work at this golf course. This is a golf course with rough around the green. You're not dealing with those shaven off fairway areas where you can hit those flop shots. You can apply spin to the golf ball. This is going to be all about those low runners where you are able to apply no spin to the golf ball, and you have to be able to judge it just based on power of your swing, weight of your swing, right? That's pretty much the only factor you can control in these type of conditions. And I worry about his ability to do so. So that's one of the few, I guess, the few reasons there that I'm fading Cameron Young. Davis Riley, it's the same story. He's not really, I mean, the numbers look decent for him around the green, right? He's right around a neutral, but I would worry about the same issues with him as I do with Cameron Young in that category. And on bent grass, what is it? Yeah, he loses very similarly, right around half a stroke more per round on that surface. Cameron Young loses 0.4 shots per round on bent grass compared to his baseline. So you're talking about inexperience, not the best numbers on bent grass. And like I said, the issues around the green, I think you might start to see that this week. And if they're going to be super chalky and they all end up missing the cut, I mean, that would be a huge, huge piece of leverage for us in our player pool. So I'm going to be taking a lot of this chalk up top, like a Lowry, like a Rory McIlroy, like a John Rahm. And the best way for me to accomplish that is going to be by fading these young studs, the guys that are going to be popular in the next range down. So I think if you're going to play the, chalk up top, you have to fade this range. If you're going to play this range here, you probably got to fade some of that chalk up top. Because if you're playing Shane Lowry, Jordan Spieth, and then putting, let's say, Max Homa into the same lineup, or even a Cameron Young, I mean, you're looking at duplicating yourself, at least on those first 3 players, with maybe even 15% of the entire player pool. I mean, those are going to be chalk for a reason. So that's what we got there. I'll catch up on chat before we hop into this middle of the 8K range. Looks like there's quite a few questions down here. Let's see what we got. We got Ken, who says, hasn't Im missed the cut here several times? Thoughts on his ability to bounce back? So I didn't look at that. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I'm more worried about his just lack of recent form. Right? He played last week. He looked decent, but he was rusty through the first 2 rounds. Missed cut 57th. Yeah, another reason he's not in my pool, right? That's why he's down as a blank for me. That's what a blank means, by the way. It means I don't hate the play, but he's not in my player pool for one reason or another. So yeah, I mean, I understand the play though, because at the Masters, he's played well on similar greens to what we're going to have this week. And from a skill set perspective, he's good on bent grass. He's also very accurate off the tee, going to gain around the green and on approach. He checks all the boxes we're looking for. So, I mean, outside of that form, I do think he could bounce back, Ken. I won't have him this week just because, like you said, the form hasn't looked good. There's guys around him I like a little bit more, but I wouldn't give you crap for playing him. I think it makes a lot of sense. Nick says, how do you feel about old Kuchar? I'm okay with Kuchar. I think the recent form for Kuchar looks pretty solid. I think that's why he's going to be popular this week. I mean, look, number 4 in recent form ranking. Take a bow, Matt Kuchar. That's pretty damn impressive if you ask me. But on bent grass, and this is a huge sample size for Matt Kuchar, he's not the best putter. And if you take a look at, I mean, what's his ownership? It's 8%. It was like 13% the other day, so it has came down a little bit. He was higher owned than somebody like Adam Scott a few days ago. He's higher owned than Chris Kirk even just a few days ago. And I mean, if you're gonna tell me Chris Kirk's only 2.5% more owned than Matt Kuchar, he's also $100 cheaper, I'm gonna make that pivot all day. So I don't hate it. The recent form has been there for Matt Kuchar, but outside of that, I don't have that many other reasons I'd want to play him. I mean, what's his course history look at? I haven't looked at that at all. I don't really like Matt Kuchar. Let's just say that. Withdraw. There we go. Hopefully the mic is back. I saw that it unplugged there. He did withdraw in 2021. He finished in 32nd in 2020, which isn't all that great. That's since the renovation. But before that, he had a 4th place finish, 13th in 2018. I know he must have played before 2017. Depending on that form, Nick, if his form before 2017 was, say it's like a few top 25s, maybe a top 10 finish in there or something like that, I could see some Matt Kuchar this week. I won't be there myself, but I could see it if that course history had been there. And hopefully the mic sounds good, guys. Let me know if it sounds okay down there or if it cut out again. Planet Warrior says Neesmith shot a 10 under at the U.S. Open qualifier. Any likes there? So I considered it, but that was also why I played him last week. And he got off to a hot start, but he did sizzle down. So if anything, that would have been a reason to play him at the Charles Schwab Challenge because he was on that heater. He had that form from that week. Any semblance of whatever he found in that round, that spark is gone by now, right? It's been a week and a half at this point. So I don't think that's a reason to play him, but I don't hate the play. From a skill set perspective, it does make quite a bit of sense. Robert says the sound sounds so good. Good. I wanted to make sure it sounded good. Thank you. Chris says, my cash head-to-head lineup is Spieth, Lowry, love those two, Mito, Kuchar, Kirk, and Noren. Would you upgrade anybody with the $300 you have left over? For me, it'd be Mito. I think this is it's a trap spot for Mito Pereira. As much as I like the kid, as much as I've supported him here on the channel, he's modeled in the top 5 for us before. I mean, it was a meme at one point. He was like always a top 5 model rank for us. And I don't want to say more often than not he disappointed us, but he wasn't posting top 5 finishes every single week. It was like a top 25. He'd make the cut, finish in 30th or 40th. And I was always beating the drum on Mito's going to come around at some point, right? And he finally has. And we've taken advantage of Mito Pereira finally having those performances. But for us to expect that to be a regularity now would be foolish, right? We know from a longer term sample size that he certainly has some trouble from time to time. So not sure if I'm going to be on the Mito Pereira bandwagon this week, so maybe upgrade him. You have $300, so you could go up to Joaquin Niemann. I wouldn't mind that at all. I think Joaquin Niemann a little bit safer of a play. So maybe that, but the rest of the guys in that lineup look pretty damn good to me. Alibro says Kuchar or Wise. I would take Aaron Wise. So that also gives you, I believe, $200 to spend with. So maybe that lets you spend up somewhere else. Planet says, damn good show, man. Love it. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully we can win some money this week, man. Jin says, what do you think about Kitayama? I do like him this week. He's a relatively well-rounded player, good in some difficult conditions, played well down at the Honda Classic, another Nicklaus design. So I think there could be a little bit there for you. Mightius says, just found your channel a couple of weeks ago. Greatly appreciate your effort and the time you spend on this. Well, I appreciate you showing me some love down there in the chat and supporting me. That means a lot. Hopefully you can get as much out of this as I hope you guys can. Manny says, you're a grinder. John Green voice. I love to hear it. How many hours a week would you say you put into prep? Ooh, that's tough to say, man. Because there's a lot of times where I'm doing metrics on the side, I'm tinkering with my models and stuff like that, where, you know, it's not really engaged work, quote unquote. So it's hard to say, but at least 40 hours a week into PGA DFS itself. And I am also a pro NBA DFS player. I do play NFL DFS from time to time. So when those sports are in full action, they obviously aren't right now. There's a little bit less time put into golf. There's a lot more time put into those sports. But yeah, it's a lot of time for sure. Nick says, you better win this week. Get that new cord. I just got to make the way over to Walmart. I actually lived like a mile and a half from Walmart, and I walk there usually just to, you know, get a little bit of exercise because it's close enough. We'll see. Maybe I'll make a walk over there tomorrow for some fun. Just I obviously could take the car, but I don't want to be lazy, right? We gotta get out there. It's hot as shit down here in Florida, but we'll make it work. Robert says, is 25% Lahiri too aggressive? I don't want to talk you off it because I love the play so much at $7,200. I have 12%, which is what, 18 lineups out of my 150. If my memory serves me right, 25% would be well over the field. So I have my 5% projected owned. Maybe he comes in a little bit higher because he was somebody I talked about this week. Maybe he's 7% owned in reality. 20% you could probably get away with. 25%, you're kind of pushing it there a little bit, Robert. But hey, if it comes through, you might want a little bit more of that, right? So I don't know. I don't want to talk you off it there. Sean says the mic went down for a moment, but it's all good now. What do you think about Sanjay? So first off, thank you for letting me know that. And what do I think about Sanjay? I would agree that I like him at difficult golf courses. I have him down as a blank, so I don't hate him as a play this week, but I do worry about the fact that he hasn't played all that much, right? So he got there at the Charles Schwab last week, was able to get some reps in, but on Thursday and Friday, you could see the rust. I mean, with the putter, I believe he lost 5 strokes there on Thursday and Friday. And while he did figure it out over the weekend, some of that rust might be lingering, right? It's easy to find a spark for a day or two, but very easy to default back into those maybe bad habits that he picked up on by having to take some time away from golf. And that was due to COVID, by the way. For anybody that didn't know that about Sanjay, that's why he wasn't playing for the last few weeks. So I do kind of worry about that. So I'd say, Sean, I don't hate the play. I don't love the play either, though. Roman says, do you think DeChambeau is a sneaky top 10 play? To be honest, I'd rather bet him outright, Roman. I think if he's in contention this week, he's in contention, right? He's going to be up there in that top 5, potentially even actually win this event. And if he doesn't have his stuff, which I'd say is the more likely outcome, maybe like 60, 70% of the time, he's going to go out there and look like complete dog shit. He's going to go out there, miss the cut by 6, 7, maybe even 8 strokes based on how rusty he looks. So I would go full out with it, man. I wouldn't even bet him top 10. If you're going to bet on Bryson this week, you know, let's say you were going to put a full unit on him to finish in the top 10, maybe split that into a fifth of a unit or maybe even less than that and put it on him to win outright. That's what I would say to do, because I think if he goes out there and he actually looks like the Bryson DeChambeau of old, he could win this event. He's done it before. He's won this tournament. So wouldn't really surprise me there that much. Mark says, didn't Didn't Matt Fitz have bones on the bag when he finished 3rd? I have no idea, Mark. My memory does not go that far back when it comes to golf, just based on how many tournaments I have to cover every year. So much data in the database at this point. If that was the case, I don't know if we can even look into that, right? I mean, he's a great caddy and all, but even when he went on JT's bag, he wasn't all that good right away. Yeah, I don't know if we can quantify that. That might have been the case, Mark, but either way, not anything I'm checking on. Catch Me If You Can says, Luke's chat is growing fast. This is bullshit. The reason why he says that is in the past, I mean, like when I first started, right, there'd be like 5 people down in our live streams, right? There wouldn't be like any questions. And Catch Me If You Can's been an OG. He's been here literally since the very beginning. Like when I had like 30 subscribers, like I'm not even kidding. He was one of the first people here. And yeah, now it's hard to get questions in, right? Back in the day, you could ask any questions you want. I'd cover them in full detail. Now you gotta ask some good questions. We got Abrasive. It says Spieth or Steele or Mito and Neiman. I would say Spieth and Steele. They would be my cash plays there for sure. Roman says, I love all the effort you put into it. Keep it up. The great content. I appreciate the kind words. And Wilson says he likes Jon Rahm. I love him too. I think he's a great play this week. And Anson says, have you shown the weather yet tomorrow? I have, but I'll show it again. So give me a second here. 1 second. Share my screen. All right. So I usually show it at the beginning. So if anyone's watching this on replay, obviously you've already seen this. We'll do this quickly. But yeah, the weather isn't anything crazy. It's relatively benign, about teens in terms of wind gusts for most of the day on Thursday. On Friday, it's a little bit harder to play in the afternoon than it will be in the morning, but the wind gusts don't get higher than 20 miles an hour. So from a wind perspective, there's not all that much to worry about. The one major factor when it comes to the wind is going to be this rain. So as of right now, over there in Dublin, Ohio, it's thunderstorming. So there's going to be a little bit of more receptive conditions here for Thursday. So if there's going to be a round to go out there and take this place low, it is going to be tomorrow. So if there's going to be that 6 to 7 under par round at Muirfield Village, I would expect that to happen on the first day, but it to get more and more difficult as the week goes on. I believe outside of the storms that are happening right now, there's not any in the forecast for the entire weekend. They also have the sub-air system. So I mentioned that when I talked about the weather too. Muirfield Village had a sub-air system installed during the 2020 renovation, which means that even if it does rain overnight, if they decide to turn on the sub-air when the rain ends, which I believe it's supposed to end right around like 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time, they could have it completely dried out and just as firm as it was this afternoon by tomorrow morning. So I don't know if we can look into the weather all that much. It's not that difficult. There's not really an AM PM split to speak of, but wanted to make sure we could show that to you there because weather is always important when it comes to golf. It's one of the few factors that you have in your control. We got Robert who says, I feel like I bought low in Luke's channel, cash. For sure. You were also one of those OGs back in the day. Ali says, can you tell me why on Lahiri one more time? Yes, I can. So I love Lahiri this week because the recent form is like it. When you look at the stats, it's eye-popping. So we take a look at him. He's gaining a ton off the tee. He's gaining across all 4 categories. I think that's the most eye-popping thing about it. And he's played well at this course. He has a second-place finish back here in, I believe, 2017, if memory serves me right. Yep, back in 2017, he finished in second place. Made his 2 other trips here in 2018 and 2019. He's been probably the best stretch of form that we've ever seen Lahiri on for his entire career at this point, where he's gaining across all 4 categories. All signs point to this being a pretty good week for him. So that's why I like Lahiri. It's one of the more convicted plays in that 7K range we've had for quite some time because he has the skill set, he has the recent form, and he has the course history. Now, usually those type of plays are reserved for the top of the 8K range or the 9 or 10K range, right? Those stud options. Got Steven down there. Thank you for the kind comment there. Anton says, won't that help soften the greens? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if it rains overnight, it would soften the greens. But if they turn on the sub-air, they could take all of that out. They could take all the moisture out. So it's kind of hard to say how that actually plays out there. And Corey says, Kirk or Willett or Wise or Kitayama. Wow, those are 2 really good options. For me, it'd have to be the second pair, just based on I like Kitayama a little bit more than Danny Willett. But I like both Chris Kirk and Aaron Wise. That's a pretty hard 50-50, to be honest with you. But I would go with the second pair, the Wise Kitayama. And Manny Jackson says 30 to 40 hours. Wow, man. So me throwing together lineups half drunk, laying in bed isn't going to cut it. Hey, maybe you get lucky. Blind Squirrel finds it out every once in a while. But yeah, dude, the guys that play this professionally, there's a few of them in the industry that obviously I'm friends with, that talk to for quite some time. They put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. And to be quite honest with you, that might be a little exaggerated because I count like the time I'm watching golf in that 30 to 40 hours. So that's one thing I have to admit too, right? Is watching, a lot of the replays, watching on Shot Tracker, all that stuff. I include in that because it's all research time. It's me reacting to the golf course, placing outright bets and that kind of thing. In terms of like actual analysis time, like sitting down, looking through the numbers and whatnot, that's probably closer to like 15 to 20 hours. So I should clarify that. And Wilson says, what about Jon Rahm? I do love Jon Rahm this week. He's one of my favorite plays. He's won here before. He should have won here last year. So definitely has the motivation to go out there and succeed. But let's go ahead and continue with some of these guys here in the 8K range. We will circle back on questions here in a little bit. But at the top of the 8K range, at least where I'm playing, right, we're fading the top with guys like Cameron Young, Max Homa, Davis Riley. I'm going back to Daniel Berger. Daniel Berger is a little bit where he was injured for the last 1 or 2 months. You saw him withdraw from a few events, but the fact that he's playing in back-to-back weeks shows me that he's probably on the healthier side of things at this point. And if it's going to be a healthy Daniel Berger at this price tag and at just single-digit ownership, I think that's worth buying in on. And this 7.4% might even be a little bit high. Would not surprise me if he came in a little bit lower owned than that. Corey Connors, I thought was going to be super chalky this week, but he's only 9.3% owned. If he's going to be right around that mark, I'm going to have plenty of them in my lineups. Joaquin Niemann at $8,300. I talked him up as a sleeper pick, so not going to go into full detail here with this Chilean, but he played well. He's played well at difficult golf courses. He's got the around the green play that we need for these difficult tracks. So just to give you an idea, you can see that he's gaining around the green, gaining with the putter, just has to bring the irons, right? So he's not a for sure play, maybe not the safest play on the board, but if he can bring the irons to the table, I mean, you're looking at a top 10, top 15 finish from the Chilean. You have Keegan Bradley, talked about him earlier. He's got a lot of upside. I do worry about Abraham Answers around the green play. It's going to be a full fade for me. We talked about the Mito Pereira trap. I do think that he's due for a little bit of a disappointing performance at this point, which seems like a bad reason to play somebody, or to avoid somebody in this case, of course. But in the past, it's paid off. I mean, we know his track record isn't this consistent world beater. I mean, the stats show that. I mean, that's why we've been on Mito Pereira his entire career. But he's going to miss a cut here soon. And if it's 17% owned Mito Pereira that misses the cut this week, that'd be a good spot to be off of. That's for sure. Because, to get leverage on a guy that's 17% owned, we're going to have to put 20, 25, maybe even 30% of our lineups into him. And I'm not comfortable doing that. Not at this type of golf course. Seamus Power, super low owned. Same thing with Billy Horschel. They were both leverage plays that I see myself getting to. Relatively accurate off the tee, so they have that going for them. And the approach play for Billy Horschel, it hasn't been all that good, but Seamus Power has been pretty decent. So if there's going to be one that I preferred, it would be Power over Horschel there. Patrick Reed, 14% owned. I mean, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth when I actually have to make him in a play this week and actually play him. Let's say 25% of lineups like I have them in right now. It's not the most comfortable thing to do. Cool. I'm going to make sure my mic didn't unplug there. Ended up hitting it with my water bottle. But at $7,900, I think you have to play him because of the form's been there. I mean, he went from being an absolute dog shit player when it comes to his form to gaining in every category but off the tee. And now off the tee is only a slight loser. I mean, that's vintage Patrick Reed at this point. And vintage Patrick Reed plays extremely well at difficult golf courses. So we'll be making it in the pool. Let's have the Bryson combo. I have him in 7% of lineups this week. It's nothing crazy. He's $7,800. But like I said before, if he's even remotely healthy, 75% Bryson DeChambeau, if he makes the cut, all he has to do is really make the cut to be optimal because he makes a ton of birdies. I mean, even at difficult tracks, I talked about that a little bit earlier too. He finds a way to go out there and make like 6 or 7 birdies on any given day. That's why his fantasy scoring metrics, if you take a look at like Draftkings points gained, just his like average Draftkings score as compared to other people at certain events, he's outrageously good in that category. So I like him there at $7,800. We'll be in the player pool. There's a lot of risk involved there, right? But that's why we're only playing 7%. He's a superstar who, if healthy, could completely break the slate this week. Adam Scott, he's played well at this golf course in the past, most notably further in the past. I mean, of late, let's look at the course history. Don't remember it off the top of my head, but 16th, 2nd, 35th, 31st, that's pretty decent. But the further back that we go, the better that his form gets around this track. So it makes sense from a skill set perspective. I like the course history. Chris Kirk might be my favorite play on the slate. It's near the 11x in terms of points per dollar. So you're not going to beat that when it comes to projection. He loves bent grass. The recent form for him has been excellent. I mean, even the course history, while he hasn't played here a ton, he's made 2 of his last 3 cuts. He finished almost in the top 25 last year at this golf course. So just a lot of things on the positive spectrum for Chris Kirk. Siwoo Kim and Aaron Wise. I love Aaron Wise's ball striking. I love the approach numbers that we've seen from Siwoo Kim of late, where you can see he's gaining over half a stroke per round. I also think that Alex Noren is a great buyback spot. The PGA Championship was a play that really killed a lot of lineups for people, including myself, and he's going to be avoided. he's 6.3% owned. But for all the reasons that we liked him going into the PGA Championship, we should still love him. He's gaining across all 4 categories. He's a great putter, more than adequate, enough short game, and the approach play has been what's carrying him over that stretch of golf. So if he can find a way to shake off that rust that he showed at the PGA, would certainly be in a good situation there. Moving down to Mark Leishman, no idea why he's 14% owned. Way too highly owned, at least for my liking. Cameron Chingale, talked about his inconsistency before. Just guys that I like a little bit more in this range, like a Gary Woodland, like a Tom Hoge, who have both been striping it over their last 24 rounds. You can see that Tom Hoge here gaining on approach. Same thing with Gary Woodland. The main thing with Hoge that differentiates him is he's also a solid around the green player. So another player that makes his way into my 150 lineups. Gsluke, probably not the best course for him. Not the best player at hard golf courses to begin with. Right, the Byron Nelson, the easiest golf course imaginable on the PGA Tour, is where both of his wins are at. So I prefer him at those type of venues. Sepp Straka, he's won at a Nicklaus Design. Of course, the Honda Classic this year. He's got a very solid around the green play. You can see down here gaining a third of a stroke per round. The approach play has fallen off ever since his win. But if you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, it's a little bit of a larger sample size. What's he at in terms of his approach play? He's still a little bit of a loser, but a little bit less so. So hopefully he can try to channel some of that approach play from the fall swing from obviously when he won at the Honda Classic, because if he does so, this could be a solid week. You talked about Lahiri. I absolutely love him here. CT Pan, I think he's going to be higher owned than 6.4%. Because like everybody's talking him up this week, and I don't really understand why. Maybe it's the course history. Is that what I'm overlooking? No, it's like all made cuts, but they're like 50 and 40th. I do not understand the CT Pan play this week. Everyone's talking about him. The recent form's like okay. I mean, like right, he's gaining across like all 4 categories. Slight loser around the green. I'll give him credit for gaining there. The approach play has been decent, so I think that's what everyone's hunkering down on there. But outside of that one statistic, there's no reason to play CT Pan other than his approach play. And this isn't a golf course where you can just beat it to death with your approach play. You still got to hit fairways. You still got to make putts. You're still going to miss greens here. That's how difficult these greens are to hit. I worry about that aspect for him. So he's not going to be in my pool. I prefer guys like a Cam Davis, who's actually gaining around the green of late, which is a little bit surprising for him. Of course, also a very solid putter on bent grass. That's why we played him at the Rocket Mortgage Classic when he won last year. Obviously ended up cashing that ticket at a very large number. Ricky Fowler, another great bent grass putter. He loves this place. If you take a look at his course history, what is it, 11th? He does have the one missed cut there, but top 15, top 10, almost won there in 2017. And the further back that you look, it continues. Just another solid finish after solid finish for Ricky Fowler at Muirfield Village. So certainly likes the place. Brian Harmon, we talked about him as a pivot play towards the beginning of this live stream. He's, was Mega Chalk, he missed the cut, and now he's only, 10 times less owned than he was for that slate, which when you put it in that type of perspective, it shows you how silly it is. Harris English at $7,100. Probably want to wait and see on him. He was dealing with hip surgery. It's his first event back since having that hip surgery. So I would imagine that he would be a little bit more, let's say, rusty than somebody like a Bryson, just because we know that Bryson has been itching to get back at golf. I mean, he's tried to play at the PGA, tried to play at the Charles Schwab Challenge. He's been throwing the idea of him making this return for at least a month, even month and a half at this point. Whereas Harris English, the first time we've seen him back on tour, right? So a lot more question marks around him. He's obviously not as much in the public spotlight like a Bryson because of his YouTube channel, because of how active he is on Instagram. We've seen his recovery process. We know how ready he is. And honestly, he looks pretty damn ready to me, especially based on some of the swings that we've seen from him at this golf course, from his practice rounds, even from today. He's swinging the driver full bore. And I believe he had, 205 mile an hour ball speed today. He carried it, at least per the TrackMan, it was like 370 yards. That shows me that Bryson is close to 100%. So that's why he would be a play for me here. And Harris English, on the other hand, right? We have no idea how he's looked. Harris English, not necessarily a social media extraordinaire. And we're not getting daily updates on his recovery process like we're getting for Bryson DeChambeau. All right. Let me go ahead and, throat there was giving me some trouble. Catch up on chat. Catch Me If You Can says, Manny, don't underestimate that technique. I won a big showdown at 3:30 in the morning. Hey, it works. Like I said, blind squirrel finds a nut. I've done so with soccer DFS, which I don't even understand, like, the scoring process for soccer DFS. Like, I don't even know how you get fantasy points. Like, do you get it for like dribbling the ball? I won a GPP doing that same type of thing. So I understand the process for sure. Rick says, using your info from videos, I have 10 lineups, 60 players, 48 of my players are 62 to 79. That might be a little bit too hunkered towards the bottom range there for me. You might want to start to take a few more of the guys in the 8, top of the 7K, maybe the 9, 10K range. But yeah, you definitely want more guys down low. That's for sure. Chris says, be nice to jam in Smith, Spieth, and Lowry into a cash head-to-head lineup, but it looks sketchy if you do. Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, but yeah, what are you left with in terms of salary? Like $6,700, something like that. That's a tough ask for cash lineups. That's for sure. And Rex says, seems like every week low-cost players climb the leaderboard more times than not. We'll see how it goes. Not this week, though. It depends on the golf course, right? If you're at a birdie fest, if you're at a golf course that's not set up like a major championship, I would tend to agree with you, right? But if you look at major championship leaderboards, it's the opposite, right? I mean, even at the PGA championship, right? At the top of the leaderboard, it was all guys that were like chalky plays. Guys be expected to have a really solid week. At those type of golf courses, and that's certainly the type of course that we have this week. It's a little bit less the case there, Rex. But most weeks, I would definitely agree with you. A lot of volatility down low. And Rex says, all my players are different. No multiple same player on any lineups. So if I lose one golfer to the cut, it's only one golfer and not the same guy over 5 lineups. Yeah, see, you're only playing 10 lineups, so I can't really empathize with that strategy, to be honest with you. I've never just entered 10 lineups into a thing. So Mightiest Helmet says, I like Bryson, but not the course you come back and play from injury or layoff. I expect him to play well, 80 or withdrawal or 80, 82. Hey, we'll see. I think that he's going to play better than you do. That's for sure. And Roman says, Bryson at 85 to 1 odds outright. I have not bet him outright myself. I'm just playing him in DFS. I have 7% of them. Guys, I mean, he's been trying to come back for at least 3 or 4 weeks. He wouldn't have been showing up to these events if he wasn't close to actually being strong enough to play. Like, you don't just show up at the Southern Hills just to hit balls for the week. You don't leave your house, go through all these flight plans, pack your bags, all that kind of shit just to show up and hit balls. You don't do that last week at the Charles Schwab Challenge. I know he lives close to that golf course, so maybe a little bit different, but you don't do that this week, a whole way up there in Dublin, Ohio, middle of buttfuck nowhere that no one wants to go to, and just hit balls. He's there to actually play golf this week. So that's why I disagree with you there, Mightiest. I think he's actually going to have a pretty solid week. And Sam Earl says, got any plays for first round leader? I like Spieth if he's playing in the morning. I have no idea on his tee time. Other than that, go to any database you have access to, sort it by birdie or better percentage, and play some of the guys at the top of that list that are playing in the morning. That's my strategy for first round leader. It's a super straightforward strategy. It's about as simple as it gets, and it's paid off like an ATM for the last 2 years. So like I said, just go on a database, sort by birdie or better percentage in this field, and play the guys that are playing in the morning. That would be my strategy for that. Chris says $7,100 per player if you jam in those 3. Yeah, it's a little bit too low. Not quite the $6,700 I thought it would be, but it's not ideal for cash. If I was going to drop anybody between a Spieth, Lowry, and who was the last one? Who was the last one you had there? And Smith. Yeah, I would probably drop Smith and take somebody in the 8K range, because then you're probably looking at like $7,500 remaining per player. A lot more doable. So David says, any guys in the low 7 or high 6K range you'd be semi-confident playing? Yeah, dude. I've been talking about them for like the last 10 minutes, dude. Like, all these guys I have down as a yes, they're in my player pool. I obviously am confident in playing them. So just listen to what I've been saying for the last 10 minutes, dude. We're talking about that right now. And it says, how high am I on Hoagie? I like Hoagie. I don't love him. So that'd be probably the best way I could word it for you. He's 7% owned. I have 12% in my player pool. So it's a lean, but it's not like I'm smashing the play there because of the recent form, right? He missed the cut last week. That's a huge red flag for him. But as a result, he's super low owned because, I mean, 9th place, 17th place finish. He's volatile, right? He has those missed cuts before that stretch. But we know when the volatility is there, I mean, he can win an event like he's done at Pebble Beach. So, yeah, he's in my player pool, but I don't love the play. It's more of a FOMO type of play where if he goes out there, he turns it around in a hurry. he's going to be a low-owned potential top 10 play that people don't have in their pool. Rex says, thanks for the feedback. Not a big-time player as of now, so really enjoy your commentary. Keep up the good work. All good. And David, you just got here. Yeah, my bad. If you just go back like 2 minutes on like the replay of the live chat, I do go over the guys that we just talked about. So these like 4 to 5 that I like most of them, particularly Arman Lahiri. He's probably my favorite player in that bunch. We're going to talk right now about the guys here at 7K though. So I'll be able to give you a few more options. So first off, we do have Lucas Herbert, who we'll talk about right here. He's got a really solid around the green play. He looked pretty decent last week too. I mean, he was in contention there for a little bit. Not last week, at the PGA Championship, he was in contention. Sorry, 2 weeks ago. Weeks are jumbling together at this point, but he's coming in with the decent form. He obviously won this year. I think people forget about that. Lucas Herbert is a winner on tour this year, so he certainly has the upside we're looking for. So at $7,000, he is in my player pool. One of the guys in that range, David, that I'd be getting to. I do like Russell Knox. Russell Knox, an accurate driver. Of course, a great approach player too. So could see some success. And the one issue he has is with the putter. And this is a golf course we've seen some bad putters have success. Hideki Matsuyama, Tiger Woods, for example. Jason Duffner has won here before. So why not Russell Knox, his first, I shouldn't say his first win ever, his biggest win ever, that's for sure, in his PGA Tour career. Aaron Ryan, Joel Damon, 2 accurate drivers of the golf ball. So they will be in the pool for this week. That's probably about it, right? They're good, accurate drivers of the golf ball. They gain on approach, but not very good with the short game. So they're gonna have to have a ceiling week with the around the green play and the putter to get by, but you could do a whole lot worse in this range. Ryan Palmer's a blank. Same thing with Troy Merritt. I don't hate the plays, but they're not my favorite. I do worry about Scott Stallings putting on bent grass. He's horrible on the surface. So even though he has looked good over the last few weeks, might see a little bit of regression there. Adam Hadman's price makes no sense to me. He's $6,800. The modeling absolutely loves him this week. So I know he's cheaper than the range you just talked about there, David, but I do really like Hadman because the shots gain metrics are really solid. He's gaining close to half a stroke per round on approach. Off the tee, right? It's not really his thing. He's a relatively short hitter, but gaining across the board. So if you're looking for a high floor, safe play here in the 6K range, if you're playing in cash specifically, he's an even better play in that format. Cameron Champ is a high upside play. He's also really risky, though. So I'm only looking at right around 6% in my lineups. Kevin Streelman has made the cut, I believe, his last 7 trips here. If we take a look at the course history tab, you can see it's made cut, made cut, made cut, made cut. I believe even 2 more made cuts past 2017. So if you're looking for somebody to make the weekend, just take a Kevin Streelman and move on. But, I mean, the upside hasn't really been there. I mean, outside of what was a top 5 finish in 2019. That's the best that he's done. So I don't know. Don't expect him to win the golf tournament, but maybe they're in the top 15 is something that you can rely on. Johnny Vegas, Mackenzie Hughes, both make the player pool for different reasons. Johnny Vegas, he's kind of just proven that he's a good golfer, right? He can play at any golf course. He gets a knack for being a bomber, somebody you want to take at relatively easy golf courses, but he also has solid finishes at the RBC Heritage. Just this, what was it, this year? Let's see. I know he did last year. I believe he did this year too. Oh, he didn't play here last year. It was last year. Then he finished in the top 5 last year at the RBC Heritage. Wells Fargo top 15. That's another short positional track. So he's kind of just proven at this point that it doesn't matter what golf course you're at. Johnny Vegas is capable of finishing in the top 25. So I have him for that reason. Mackenzie Hughes, on the other hand, is a hard course killer. I mean, put him on a major championship, US Open, PGA Championship type of conditions, and that's when he plays his best. Now, the last PGA Championship, don't look at that, right? He missed the cut there at the PGA, and it was one of the uglier missed cuts that you're going to see, but he has shown just as recently as the Wells Fargo Championship the upside, right, where he finished there in the top 10. So I like the upside. I expect him to play well under difficult conditions. Love Brendan Steele at $6,600. I do expect him to be relatively popular, though. Do like Eric Van Rooyen. Very different reasons, right? Brendan Steele, a little bit of a safer play, whereas Eric Van Rooyen, a very volatile play, extremely aggressive, either going to gain 5 or 6 strokes with the approach play or lose 5 or 6 strokes with the approach play. So at $6,600, I do worry about that there. Don't want to play Hudson Swafford. He's going over to the Live Tour, so maybe he's dealing with the PR disaster that is right now. You have Matthew Wolff. He's so out of form. It's not even funny at this point. A lot to worry about with Matthew Wolff. Binwoo Lee, we did talk about a little bit before. Just a high pedigree player. He's number 55 in the official World Golf rankings. And for a 6K golfer, I mean, that's an atrocious price tag, right? So somebody I'm buying in on just based on pedigree alone. Same thing with Sahith Theegala at $6,500. He's another player who's just a lot better than his price tag. I know the recent form hasn't been there. That's why he's number 104 in that category. So bleeding strokes when it comes to his form. But if anybody's going to turn it around, I'd put my money on the guys that have shown the ability to do it in the past. Maria says, and this is in regards to the first round leader stuff. He's the fourth group off. He's playing with Straka and Scott. So yeah, I'd bet him for first round leader. In fact, I'm probably going to go bet him after we get off stream here for first round leader, because that is the exact type of circumstance you want him in. And he tees off at 7:30 a.m. So even better, teeing off in the morning. Chris, I'm assuming this is your final cash lineup. So it's Spieth, Lowry, Neiman, Kuchar, Kirk, and Noren. I like it. Sounds good to me, man. Robert says, who are your top 3 highest owned in your pool in this 6K range? There's like a tie between like 15 people. So there's not really one answer to that, Robert. I have like at least 10 people at like 7%. In the 6K range, let me think. Is there anybody I have over 6% or 6 or 7%, whatever I have them at? I don't think there is. No, actually there is. Brendan Steele's my highest owned in the range. He's 12% owned. He's one of the few guys that I'm going above that 7% number on. I think I have 10% Streelman just because he's so consistent. So he's like kind of like one of these 6K options that I'm willing to get to a little bit more. And you said under 7K, right? Yeah, in the 6K range. I think that's it. Other than those two, I have like a pretty flat either 5 or 7% exposure cap on all of the plays. And now not all of them are up to their cap in terms of actual usage in my player pool. They're all in that range. They're all right around that same number there. Ali says, that'll do it for me tonight. Thanks again. Learned a lot. Glad to have you here. We have Gundacker down in chat. What's going on? Hopefully you're doing well. I see you're doing WNBA content now, which for prize picks, I got to get on because I've been trying to win at WNBA over there, but without the research, without any of the numbers, wasn't finding success. But if I go and watch your videos, I'm sure I will. So nice to see you down there, Gun. Hopefully you're doing well. And Robert says, I appreciate the info as always. Let's get this cash. Couldn't agree more. Let's go ahead and finish off the 6K range here. Talk about the final plays here on the board. So we talked about Mackenzie Hughes and Johnny Vegas. Matt Jones, I worry about his whole live golf thing. He might be dealing with a little bit of a PR disaster as we speak. I already talked about EVR and Brendan Steele. Love both of the plays. Lucas Glover is playing some quietly solid golf. So the reason why he's in the pool is the shots gain metrics look beautiful. From tee to green, he's gaining in all 3 categories. He's got the deep green color there in all 3 categories. Just has to find the putter. And of course, that is an issue for Lucas Glover. But if he's going to find the putter on any one surface, it'll be bent grass, where he is better than his baseline for his career. Minwoo Lee, we talked about him. We talked about Sahith Theegala, both high upside plays when it comes to pedigree. Charles Howell III, his shots gained look pretty damn solid. So if you take a look at it, he's gaining across the board, except with his putting. But on this surface specifically, bent grass that is, he's close to 3/4 of a stroke better per round. So I like him there at $6,400. Neesmith is coming in with some form. He's striking the ball well. Pat Kazire also striking the ball pretty well at this point. Adam Svensson, he didn't win at this golf course. That was a misnomer, actually, at the beginning of the week. It was at a golf course right down the road. It's another Nicklaus design. It's the Ohio State home golf course. And because he won that event, he got an exemption into this event. So that was a little bit of a misnomer at the beginning of the week, but still like him. It's a comp course, at least from everything that I've heard between people that watch the Korn Ferry Tour a lot more than I do and have familiarity with that golf course. So there is a little bit of a correlation to be had there. He's also played well at the Honda Classic, another Nicklaus design, and he's got the approach play numbers we're looking for. And over the last 24 rounds, it hasn't been as good, right? That's why he's starting to miss some cuts. That's why he's 500 to 1 to win this event. That's why he's $6,300. He still has that approach play, right? That's the one part of his game that is never going to go away. And if you're going to be consistent at any one category, I want it to be with the irons. You have Kurt Kitayama. He's super cheap. I mean, he played decently last time out too. It's not like he went out there and missed the cut. So we take a look at Kurt Kitayama's form. It's 40th, 15th, 2nd. He did have the one missed cut there at the Byron Nelson, but solidly and quietly playing some pretty solid golf. Martin Laird, another striper with his approach play. So that's, of course, the reason why we like Kitayama and where is it? And Laird there, right? Both gaining right around a third of a stroke per round. Also, both gaining significantly off the tee. In terms of the putting, the huge difference between the two would be Kurt Kitayama over Martin Laird. But we also know that Martin Laird loves bent grass, right? Gains close to 0.7 shots more per round on bent grass than any other surface. So do like him there. Beau Hossler, one of the most mispriced plays on the slate. So you certainly are going to see him in my player pool. Justin Lauer, by the way, I didn't know to look into him until I saw the ownership numbers on him. And what is he? He's 46th, 31st, 64th, 10th place finish. So 4 made cuts in a row. And now there hasn't been anything flashy outside of that top 10 finish at the team event. But, for a guy at $6,200, he could do a whole lot worse. Nate Lashley at 2.3% owned. He makes his way into my pool. The shots gain metrics look pretty dang solid for him. He's gaining across the board, which for a guy down here at the near minimum price, like, how is he going to be $6,200 and gaining in every category? I mean, that to me, that's just foolish by DraftKings and some of the odds makers. So I wouldn't bet him outright. I don't think Nate Lashley wins the thing, but I do have 7% in my DraftKings lineups. We have Brant Stedeker. He's really good on bent grass. He gains over a stroke more per round on bent grass, and he's gaining on approach. So that's another thing that's in his skill set there and over his last 24 rounds. So I like the putting. Of course, I like the approach play we've seen. I also have my eye on Bo Hogue. I know somebody mentioned him before. He knows the golf course. His dad was the superintendent. And lastly, Robert Streb. Robert Streb is I almost called 7,000. He's only $6,000, the bare minimum. He's played well at a few of the other Nicklaus designs on the PGA Tour. He's on bent grass, a much better putter than other surfaces. And the recent form hasn't been great for Robert Streb, but at least he's still gaining on approach. So kind of similar to an Adam Svensson. If there's going to be any one stat that you're at least still gaining with, it's better damn be the approach plays. So that's going to be it for the board, guys. We'll catch up on chat before we hop on out of here. We got Rex that says, good luck, everybody, this week using a little bit of a different strategy. We'll see how it goes. That is a great idea, by the way. You always want to be tinkering with what you're doing, kind of experimenting from time to time. So I don't hate that idea at all. He says, again, best of luck to everybody, and thank you for the great info. Well, thank you for the kind words. And like I said, best of luck this week. I think that's a great idea. And Mighty says, Lauer, I sprinkled him in with the other two, Ohio and Connors. Connors went to college in Ohio, right? What was it, like Akron or something like that? I didn't even consider that with Connors, but he's probably played this course a few times. You might be onto something there, Mightiest. I haven't thought about that. And Wilson says, Harris English. I'm not a huge fan of English this week. If you're not familiar, he is coming back from hip surgery. So he hasn't played since then. I'm just worrying a little bit about rust there with him, Wilson. So I'm not going to be a buyer there. We got Steven who says, many thanks. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully we have a solid week here. And he went to Kent. Yeah, I knew it was one of those small colleges there. Mackenzie Hughes went there too. So you could also be looking at Mackenzie Hughes for that reason this week. He's probably played the golf course. Kent's not that. How close is Kent to Columbus? I got to look this up now. You've put me officially down the rabbit hole. So you got Kent's directions to Columbus. Because if it's relatively close, I'd assume they've played the golf course. Because any of these, what is it? It's a 2-hour drive. Maybe not. All right, maybe not. If it was closer, if it was like an hour away, I would say that I'm pretty sure that they would have played the course, but maybe not so much now. And Mighty says, awesome stuff. Good luck this weekend and get that cash. Couldn't have said it better myself, guys. Best of luck to all of you out there. Hopefully you guys learned something from this live stream. Went a little bit longer than I'm intending on doing it, but want to go over everything in the docket, right? Don't want to cut any corners. Want to make sure we're giving every player their due diligence. So I appreciate everyone that stayed by for the whole stream. If you do have any questions and you're watching this on replay, do not be shy to go ahead and comment them down below. I'll get to them when I see them. Best of luck with your outrights too. Obviously there is a live stream on the channel for that already. So if you're looking for my outright bets, my takes on that market, make sure to go ahead and check that video out. We will have showdown content this weekend, prize picks videos. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so you don't miss any of that. And lastly, if you haven't already smashed that like button, first off, why'd you wait an hour and a half to go ahead and hit that like button? But make sure you go ahead and do that before you hop on out of here too. Best of luck, guys. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the showdown stream.